Thank you everyone for attending. So we've got a lot of information. We've had a lot of information. We've had a lot of dialogue. So now we need to make some decisions on what to recommend to the governing body. So the first one, and everyone got the questions. So the first question is about the BLS and ALS. And
okay, I have a question. Hold on, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this considered the last meeting or?
Yes. Hopefully, if we get finished, it is. If not, we are hopefully can meet one more time.
Right. Thank you.
So ALS and BLS, the previous discussions indicated everyone was for the ALS. Is that still correct, or does anybody not want to recommend to the governing body that we go forward with ALS? Okay. So we will recommend that we do the advanced life support. Do we need to talk about the response times in the sport utility vehicle, City Manager?
Well, I think that's still a concept that we were going to be looking at exploring, but I think if that was something that was of interest, I think stating it simply as that is probably enough at this point. You know, I don't think we have a bona fide proposal specific to something like that. And so it would be one of those things that we take a look at still, but it isn't something necessarily that I think we have a complete proposal on how we would implement something like that.
Okay. So the next one is just the fire station. So what I heard last time was most people agreed that we should build the West Side Station, but keep the two in North Topeka. Is that what I heard? Does anybody have, is that what do we want to recommend?
I want to speak on that real briefly. I think it's important that the citizens that are part of this board, this commission, understand that the city council has been receiving a number of emails all week for residents and business owners in North Topeka that they want their taxpayer dollars utilized, and they want both stations to stay open as they are, to be fully manned and not closed down for any number of days. And I think that any council members on here can also speak to the number of emails that we've been receiving. And I anticipate that they will be continued to come in up until the time that a vote is taken on this. So in the emails that I had read that were sent to the city council and other information and talking with constituents, there is no aversion to don't give Southwest 6 or that area what they need. There was no talk about that. What there is talk and some upset about is discussion about, wanting to close either 1 or 11, and for 1 having been closed last year on so many dates. And again, the entire body received those emails.
Okay. Any other additions? Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. Good evening. I will support keeping in mind that we don't have a fire station in District 9, and I will support the continuance of building Fire Station 13 there. I will also support keeping 1s and 11 opens as long as we can. And I say that because I've been reading and talking to different people that work in the stations, and I know our stations are getting old. And so I will support that. But at some point in time, and I just want this to go on record, we're going to have to figure out if we build another one in District 2. And and I would support building a new one that could handle those two in that area. There was a suggestion right there on Topeka Boulevard, right off of, I think it's Paramount. I think that would be a good place right there. And so I would support that, because we don't have the money, and I know it's going to take a lot of money to keep pouring into Station 1 and Station 11. As much as I'd love to continue to keep them open forever and ever, they're just not going to last forever and ever. So,
And I would ask Councilwoman.
Wait a minute, I have the floor, Christina. So that's very rude of you just cutting in. So if you would,
so I apologize on that. Let's
Thank
take a
you.
breath.
Thank
Let's
you.
take a breath,
Thank you.
Sylvia. Take a breath.
I have the floor. I have the floor.
Take a
I'm breathing.
breath. Good.
And so I would
Good to
just
know.
like to make sure that that is put on the record, because at some point in time we're going to have to get there. And whenever we close one station, it affects the whole Topeka. It doesn't just affect one part of town. It affects every single body. So because you're taken away from different areas, and that's what we're doing now to District 9. We're taken away from them, and our response times are longer. So I think once we have our stations in check, then we can look at response times. But to get over there and double the time in District 9, I don't think any citizens would feel happy with that. And if I was that council rep, I wouldn't feel happy with that. And as a council rep that not only represents District 3, but the whole city, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Chair, I just wanted to say, please, that, I would ask Councilwoman Ortiz if she actually talked to constituents or businesses. Understand that we're looking at fire stations that are old. We're also understanding that 9 needs to be built, and that is not an issue. So I don't know where that is coming up from, probably nowhere. And so I would say that there's no aversion by constituents or businesses to having a fire station built, understanding that our firefighters deserve the best, and they deserve, everyone deserves a new station. It's not going to be able to be done right now. But having talked to businesses, talked to residents, and talked to firefighters, it's keeping these stations opened and manned. And if we have to expand on them to give them more room for now, then let's do it. But talking about having one fire station where it was already stated here that it would not be manned to what the needs are going to be, as if you would have 1 and 11 open if you put in a new fire station. And are you going to have all of those firefighters there? It was said earlier in the meeting that no, that is not what would happen. They would be transferred over to 9. And that is what residents and businesses in District 2 do not want. And so I just think we need to make that clear. And again, no aversion to having 13 built, because it is needed there.
Okay, so any disagreement that we should not build the new station? Everyone in agreement that we should? And at this point in time, leave 1 and 11 open until we're pushed into having to do something else. Correct? Mr. Chris.
All that being said, I'm definitely for the new station over on 6th. I think it's definitely needed. It's definitely going to supplement 7 by far. As far as talk about a new one in District 2, I think we're years from talking about that. To be honest with you, I just looking at the money. Let's get real. We can't spend money that's not there. We can't go to the taxpayers and ask for that much, or you guys cannot go to the taxpayers and ask for that much, because I'm a taxpayer. I would say no. Yes, let's get one. Let's get the number 6 station built. Number two, let's get a real budget for the fire stations that we do have
Mhm.
and maintain them. I've talked to a lot of firemen through this on the side, and there's roof leaks, faucets, just ridiculous things that need to be fixed. And here they don't have the money, or it just doesn't get fixed. I'm gonna say I'm kind of appalled that something is not set in stone a little bit better than what's not set in stone. We have to take care of what we have. Let's not go build a new one without a plan of taking care of what we have. So let's get the new one built. Let's get a plan put in place of taking care of what we have. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think that needs to be included in our recommendation to the governing body, that there be something more concrete. City manager.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of doing those analysis on each of the fire stations to make sure we know what each needs to be done. We have a list of things we already know about, and then we've hired a consultant, and they're evaluating every one of our fire stations right now to understand what they need. We intend to do, if 3 stations need roofs, do a bid that does all 3 fire stations roofs. Those kind of things are being worked on right now by Hannah Ulrich. So it's being studied, and we kind of have an idea of what some of those things already are, but we're working that towards a more concise list and plan to be able to attack those. Eventually go forward with doing renovations of existing stations, but we also know, as you stated, we got to fix all the roofs before we fix what's inside. And so, do a complete renovation on something needs to be completely repaired before we go and do that, so we don't lose out.
And I absolutely agree, but I want it sooner rather than later. I mean, I've been talking about that same list for 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So we don't need to go another 5 years saying, well, we're still working on that list. Mr. Chris.
Here we're compiling a list now. I mean, I'm sorry, Brent, but isn't this something that should be taken care of? If something breaks in your house, do you not get it taken care of now?
And Chris, we do. We fix those things. So, it may not be that everything is fixed right away, but those things that are they're analyzed all the time by our staff. So, and we fix those things that need to be fixed. So
things as simple as a faucet or a leaking roof. I mean, those are things that should be, if a fire station calls in and says, hey, we need this taken care of, we shouldn't have a leaking roof for 3 months, creating more damage. That's just my opinion.
I agree.
Mr. Aaron.
Sandra, I just want to be on the record. I can appreciate that we're going around again to make more lists again about what's wrong with each fire station. We've done it numerous times, just like we've done studies over and over and over. We gave a complete renovation to Station 3, and we're a year later, we are still dealing with water leaks that existed prior to the renovation that are still coming through electrical panels. We still have water leaking into the women's bedroom every single time it rains. And we report it time after time after time. Somebody comes out, takes a look, says, I can't remember who came out the last time, says it's not their issue, so they're passing it on to who knows who. So I can appreciate that we're making lists and trying to figure out what's wrong with stuff, but we've done it enough, and it's time to fix what we have. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
I would say that what Chris has been saying is he's been going and talking with a lot of the firefighters. It's completely unacceptable. It needs to be something that we talk about to get added into the budget for these repairs that are needed. the same thing with their equipment, the gear that they wear, all of this should be something, instead of building an additional fire station other than 13, we should be putting money as soon as possible into our budget to get these issues dealt with. Because there's no reason why our public health and safety people should be having to deal with these type of conditions. I understand that we're still in the time of COVID in budget cuts. I understand it's been really hard, city manager, and I think that you've done as good a job as can be expected. However, these things are not acceptable for our guys and gals to be going through. And I think that, again, I would agree with Sandy and with whoever else. I'm sure that the lists have already been made and are somewhere gathering dust. And as you continue to add consultants, cost, and as you continue to add list, cost, and time, I mean, you're just going to show continued deterioration on the stations that we have. And I just strongly encourage and will at council meetings that we need to be putting extra money or add money or move money around to get them the repairs that they need and the gear that they need, and look at what we can do on how long it's going to take for them to get the updated apparatus that they need. Thank you, Sandy.
So if we could add that into the recommendation, who's writing up the recommendation? City manager, is that you? You're muted.
Yeah, I'm taking notes and related to the recommendations. Some of them are already listed out, but yes, writing down those, and that was one definitely makes sense.
So maybe, the governing body could make it more detailed on exactly when and what and how. Mr. David.
Yeah, I'm just agreeing with that. Also, just talking about, besides just the buildings, from our previous meetings, maybe I'm mistaken. I think the apparatus, the vehicles and that kind of stuff they've got a replacement cycle for those things. But I did hear in past meetings, just simple equipment needs like old uniforms and stuff like that too. I think those types of things should also be factored in. Can't have a leaky roof, can't have a bad sink, also need up-to-date equipment for our firefighters.
Thank you. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think if we could recommend that we do a list maybe 3 or 4 times a year. We all know that things happen. And Brent, I would recommend that the list maybe come from the employees and not the police or the fire chief. Because they're in the stations and they know what's going on. So if they're communicating with our chief and our chief is not communicating back to us, we don't know what's happening until we go and talk to them, or we go there and we figure out what's going on with them. So I think that's been a problem all along. We asked the fire chiefs, how's everything going? And everything's fine. And in reality, it hasn't been. So I think that we need to set up a better system.
So would you like?
Excuse me?
Would you like Chief Duke to answer that?
Yes, he has his hand up.
I would like the captains to maybe provide a list. And that way, since they're there, that we know that. I'll say this. I went by station 3, and we have those sinks that are automatic. And right now with COVID, but not only just with COVID, but with our firefighters that are washing their hands and shaving, and they're there. You know what? You don't get no warm water. I washed my hands and I didn't get any warm water until after I was almost done. And I think I'm going to ask that we put back in some new faucets in there, so those guys can wash up and brush their teeth and do what they need to do. Because those automatic ones, and I understand that we're trying to save money and that's all great, but it's just not kicking it for them. I mean, it works for me, but when they're coming in there time after time after time and they're trying to get that grit off. So somewhere there's a breakdown. So that's why I'm asking, maybe we recommend that the captains, for each station, go ahead and send those lists through so many times a year. So maybe we'd have a better understanding. I can give you some other things that's wrong, but I won't hold up the time. Thank you.
Chief Duke.
Just to clarify something for everybody, like the city manager said, yes, there were lists. There have been lists before, just like all the studies that they were, I think that Aaron mentioned, and we're trying to fix this problem. And when I came here it'll be 4 years this Saturday, they have a program in their City Works that anybody in the station with the authority of their captain can get on and put in a repair. I never see all the repairs. It could be anything from a broken faucet, a leaky toilet, and then that information goes on to facilities who schedule the repair. If there's an emergency repair, they try to get that done as soon as they can. I don't have control over who comes in and when they come in, and when we get notified there's a problem, it goes straight to facilities, and then facilities signs off when they're done. That's the only thing we'll see. It's broke, they've been notified, they've come in, they've fixed it, repaired it, replace it, and then that's it. I mean, that's why you don't see these lists that they're doing is for the actual infrastructure of the facilities that the city manager talked about. There are stations still with boilers. Boilers should be a thing of the past, and every time we've done a major repair, we are getting boilers out of there and going with HVAC. The buildings are old. Some of them are very old. The majority of them can be put on the historical designation by the state. And there's some stuff that, like the slate tiles on a couple of the stations, that would cost a fortune to replace them with the same. So this engineering firm's going and giving us ideas how to better adapt these stations to current needs. Because like I said, in 1935, they were running horses out of some of these stations. And now you're adapting to putting large equipment in there. We've got a couple of stations that we have to have a specified size because the normal size would not go in, which is an expense. And the only thing that we talk about stations and moving them around, we look at it. I showed you the maps where the call loads were and where there's been annexation. And the city is growing one way or the other, whether it's commercial, residential, or industrial. And we have to adapt our responses to make sure that we are able to meet what I think is a good goal right now, 5 minutes and 30 seconds to anywhere in the city. I feel we can do that, but sometimes you may need to make adjustments to your locations because it's growing one way or the other. And if you leave that end of town unprotected, then what are we going to do with that? We're trying to make it fair for everybody, that everybody gets the same level of response. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to close down stations just to get new stations. We're moving our responses to try to cover different areas of the city to make everybody have an equal response. So the study that the city manager said, yes, it's a good thing. We have engineers doing it. We have the administration staff going around with them, and we have union personnel going around with them when they're available to talk about what's going on in the stations, what's wrong with them, and they are getting their input as this company goes around with everybody and talks about the issues at the stations. So with the sinks, all the sinks were replaced. That was because of COVID. No touch. There's no touch handles in some of the doors. We're trying to adapt to something. It may be uncomfortable right now, but when we found out there was hot water wasn't getting there quick enough, we got a hold of facilities, and they've gone around. They're supposed to have adjusted all of those, and this was just last week. We only found out about it, I think, last week, and then we did our thing, put it in CityWorks, facilities went out there and started adjusting all the faucets. So the hot water would get to them a lot quicker. Sorry, I rambled on a little bit. Sorry, Chris, but I had to just say that. Thank you.
Well, I know, 2 or 3 years ago, Jason and I and city manager and the fire department and facilities, and we all sat down and we had a meeting and we got that process into place. However, the problem is you said it goes out and it gets repaired or it doesn't. And the problem, I think, is no one knows. Besides the firefighters, nope, it didn't get fixed. So who is actually the follow-up person to make sure this gets fixed? And I also think the firefighters in the past have asked so many times to get something fixed and it never happens. They stop asking. Plus, they're men. They don't, it really, and they're firefighters. They're there to do the job. They don't care if it really has new paint. They don't care if the door, I think it's, have a woman walk into those places and they'd be ticking off everything. But I think sometimes they make do with what they have because they're there to do the job. So I think it's our responsibility to also assist them and make sure those things get done and not just have a good process, because if the process is good and it still doesn't get done, it's not a good process. Chris.
What you just said, Sandra, I'd like to add to that. Who is accountable for taking care of these lists? Somebody has to be held accountable. We can't let engineer firms run around and the administration run around with union heads and all that, just compiling lists that go nowhere. Somebody has to be, I'm not going to say have their job held accountable. They just need to have accountability for creating actions on these lists.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sullivan, on that, like I say, a lot of this stuff has been historical. And we're all trying to move ahead and get things done. And I know that's my goal. Yes, there are stations that do need a lot of work to them. We're finally getting the apparatus up to a point now where it's still not there, but replacing the apparatus with a program looking at replacing them at certain times so we're not running into those issues of having a 15, 20-year-old piece of apparatus going down the street or needing it to go down the street on call. We're trying to get it at about 10 years, which is industry standard, and we're looking at better equipment and everything. We've got a product right now that I think that the firefighters like. The apparatus that we're utilizing now, it's one of the major suppliers. We are going for what we need, not just because it's the cheapest piece of equipment. And I feel that sometimes has been going on a lot because they are quite expensive. But if you want something good, you have to pay for it. Now, these stations, it's like you said, sir, it's just like your home. You have to fix it. Well, there's 12 stations, and I think that the city, I can't remember, Mr. Trout, how many city buildings there are. There's like 170 of them. And facilities only has so many people working there, and they try to, work their list down as they get it and prioritize it about if someone's air conditioner goes off in the summer and we have a sink at a station, and I don't mean that, I say this with tongue in cheek here, their sink's dripping, the air conditioner is going to get done first. That's the way I would do it if I had that many buildings. And it's just like what we're trying to do now is prioritize the repairs to these stations. Like Station 3, yes, it did have the remodel done after sitting on somebody's desk or in a drawer for about four or 5 years. And the first thing I did when we got here, let's do it. If we got the money, let's do it. And it got done. And then there was a change when Mr. Trout came in. He understood. He went and visited all the stations with me and saw the condition of them. And he's the man that has to go in front of everybody and say, hey, we need this money. And the council, I watches on Tuesday nights, and I've been to the last couple of meetings. There's decisions made. You have to prioritize what road's going to get repaired next, or what street fix, or what we need to do in the community. And we're just part of his problem, trying to prioritize and basically try to keep everybody appeased as best he can with the limit. I'm not going to say the limit, but with the funds that he has available to do everything. And it's just like any other department in the city. We're given a budget, and we have to operate by it, and we try to work around it the best we can. But if we have a major repair come in on a piece of apparatus, which we did two years ago when we had all our monies that we were going to use to buy certain things, we had to spend them on two pieces of apparatus that their engines blew, and it was the older apparatus. So we tried to do the best we can with the monies we have. We tried to be good stewards of your money through our budgeting and everything. And yes, I have gone and asked the city manager for extra. Someone mentioned about equipment and gear. I don't like to say this, but because of COVID, we've got extra gear. We were able to put in for CARES Act money, and now everybody has 2 sets of bunker gear. We have an alternative set of gear that they can use on anything but a house fire. You know, we're trying to do that. The city manager has set to try to make these things possible, but he's limited to as to what needs being prioritized by the city council. And I'll get off my soapbox. Sorry.
Well, and I agree with you. However, that's the job. I mean, if you're going to fix the air conditioner in building A and watch building C fall down, that's not good. That's not any good. That's not helping anybody. You're just making more cost. If you need more money, more people to do more jobs, fix a sink and an air conditioning, then that's what you need to do. And it's just, it's the governing body and it's the city manager, and they'll have to figure out where to get the money. I mean, I think we all in agreement. The fire stations have been put on the back burner because of all the other air conditionings, and we've got to stop that because they're getting to a place where you can't repair them. So I think our recommendation is that the governing body really look at trying to not control, but really keep an eye on how this is progressing, that there are money for repairs and they are getting done and they aren't being put off. Okay, so the next part of this is, so if we agree that we need to build that new station, what would our recommendation be on the funds? Would you have more taxes levied? Would you keep the budget the same and other expenses reduced to accommodate the expense of a new fire station? Keeping the tax levy as it is? What say we? Yes, Mr. King.
I'll start us off. I think if we need to increase the budget to adequately cover those expenses of adding the new fire station, then yes. That said, there might be other ways to tweak the city's budget to keep it flat. You know, flat is best right now, but we also need to have adequate money to do what we need to do with the fire department. So that's what I think.
Okay. I couldn't see who it was. Okay. Councilwoman Christina.
Yeah, just say Christina. I would say that I know that things are really tight, but we have to get them up to par to where they need to be in the responsibility that they have for protecting us. We owe them that service, for giving them what they need, giving them, whatever it takes in that way. I'm open. I know that budget time is going to be really hard, and I'm still getting acclimated to the process. But I would say we need to do what we need to do to make this happen.
So even if we need to raise the mill levy?
Well, I see that, there's not a whole lot of response from other council people, but, I know that mill levy is people do not like to broach that subject. I think, however, when you come to public health and safety,
Yeah.
you cannot undercut that. And I think that at base, constituents know that. I think it should be a last resort, but I think that we should put that up as yes. I would support it. But I'm not saying just a quick move into it. But if that's
Right.
what needs to be done, then yes, Sandy. Thank you.
So would we rather have a mill levy or a sales tax? quarter cent sales tax, which raises, what was it? 1 point something million, city manager?
It would, a quarter of a cent increase raises about 7.5 million. Half cent currently raises about 15 million. A half cent increase. That's what we get with our streets. It's about 15 million a year with that tax levy that we approved.
And how much would the mill levy need to go up to get that amount?
Each mill of increase generates a little over 1 million, about 1.1. Between 1.1 and 1.2 million is generated by each mill increase. So
what does that mean to me as a house owner? One mill would be how much? 100 on, isn't it $10 on 100 or 100 on 1,000 or something?
it's gosh, I think it's like, it would be like $10, I think, on one.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Per 100,000 in value.
Right. Or do we just want to say, governing body, hey, we think you need to either raise the sales tax or raise the mill levy, you decide.
Well, and I think that's one of those things that you're right. It probably is not a fair question to this group to answer because you don't know when you get to, if you look at it, if a new station's built, that's when you need to add the new firefighters. And so that's when you need to add the 1.1 million to your budget. If we're 5 years away from building a new fire station, the situation could be different relative to the mill. If we grow and our tax base grows and we don't need it, I mean, it could be there are other things that we want to look at that would be paid for with the sales tax as well. And so there may be more than just public safety that's added into the sales tax. And so it really is kind of an unfair question because there's no way to know exactly what else is going on 5 years from now with regards to the budget. I think the key is by saying that you want to build the new station and you're not going to close any, that forces that there's an additional 1.1 million added to the expense, and then you'd have to figure out where that comes from.
Okay, so just us recommending that the money issue is like later down the road.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris?
This is all happening in the new station, that is. It's happening in Mr. Lesser's district. I have not heard him say a word about any of this. I'm kind of interested in that.
That's unusual, Mr. Lesser.
What's your thoughts, Mr. Lesser?
Well, I'm just trying to take it all in at this point. So my thoughts would be fundamentally, I represent District 9, but fundamentally, I look at the city as a whole. Period. My position obviously is District 9 needs a new fire station. That's definitely my position. For access for West Hills, for access for all the development we've got on River Hill now with Federal Home Loan Bank, Sunflower Foundation, security benefit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the access that from the location where we've got the property to the river for river access is a better access point than what we had before. I think I'm not, to answer the question, do I support a sales tax increase? No. I would, if that was wanted to be a ballot issue, I would support asking the public if that was something that they would consider. Would I vote for a mill increase? No, not at this point in time. Where I'm at is I've not made a decision about whether we close any or whether we don't close any. I don't feel like I have enough information. I think we have to look at everything in totality and look at different.
May I interrupt 1 second? Mr. Lesser?
Yes.
Have you not been involved in this commission with the rest of us? In other words, well, yeah. So you have all the information that the rest of us have, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just kind of baffled as to why you don't have more to say about it or a firmer stance per se.
So was that a question or was that a statement?
Take it as you will. Me as a citizen out of your district, I am willing. I'm voting to say, hey, put a fire station over there. But I was curious as to your thoughts in the matter because I haven't heard you say much throughout the whole commission.
So I think Councilmember Lesser, you want the statement, right?
Well, yeah, I was halfway through I was saying, so, if you'd like for me to finish, I can. Otherwise, I don't have to finish. That's fine.
Oh, come on, let's go.
So I think my position is that I want to look at all the I think we have to look at all efficiencies. I don't think that you may be in a position to make a decision. I'm not. I just as recently as today, you can ask Mr. Freeman that I asked Aaron that I'd like to sit down and pick his brain and ask him some more questions. I ran into former Chief Phillips 2 days ago. I told him I'd like to talk to him, get some opinions from him. As far as that goes too, I'm not in the position where I've done all the research or I'm ready to make a decision. Maybe you are. I'm not, and I don't apologize for that. I know that there's difficult decisions that have to be made on all levels. I support, like I said, District 9. We obviously need that from a response time. I think we need that to protect that area. But to tell you that I've made a decision on everything, I don't have the information to do that. And quite frankly, if you do, that's fine, but I don't, so.
Okay, Christina.
Thank you, Sandra. I understand, Mike, if there is definite research that you have to do, because heaven only knows we have a lot on our plates right now. I do have to say, though, if that is the case, then how are we going to do any recommendations if, I don't think that the onus should be all put on me as a council person, as part of this commission, or any one of us as part of this council mission. We are a collective body. And I know that we probably can't all be in 100% agreement, but we should be able to say, I should be able to say, and I'm sure that there are things that I am missing out on, that I'm not able to look at every single thing. And I admit the amount of information was completely a lot. But then I asked, what are we doing here as a commission? Because even though Topeka is all one body, right? And we understand that. And I think that when it comes to the bottom line, we serve as a body the majority of the time on council. However, this commission was put together because of the heated debate that came about with possibly closing 1 or 11. Now, all this other information has come out, but we know that it's impacting 2 and that it's impacting 9, even though we are a city as a whole. But I mean, I don't know what we're doing then if we can't, take more of a stance. I don't think it has to be a hard stance, but I think that we have to give them something, especially the ones whose districts it's in, Mike. And I'm not trying to pick anything here, man. I'm just telling you that, I wonder what we're doing here then.
Mr. Jason.
Go ahead, Jason.
One thing that Councilman Lesser said that needs to be stated is that moving the boat, we'd get better access to the river when we move to 6th and Fairlawn. That's actually not true. All of our issues, or most of our issues that we have that are around the river, revolve around the weir. And the best access point for that is off of Northwest Saline, where those crews access that river point right now. So just so we're clear, that is the best access where we get on the river right now.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager?
Well, I think on that, Jason, I think I'd want to know with the new weir improvements that we're making, where that's still true. That's something maybe we can talk further on down the road, because I don't know if that's been factored in yet, but that's going to be much safer access there. Besides that, I think as far as—
1 second.
Yes, Jason.
The biggest issue with the 6th and Fairlawn access point is when they drop the boat in there to get to the weir, the river is so low and there's so much sand, they're carrying the boat more than they are actually in the boat. So it actually takes a lot longer for them to get from that point down to the weir than where they currently drop in right now.
Okay. Now, as far as what we were talking about earlier, as far as the recommendation, and it may be that it's, this is and when I've looked at the financial part of this, it is probably 5, probably 6 years before the money's in the budget to be able to build the new station, unless it becomes a higher priority to build the new station and we shift some other things around in the budget. Because right now there is no new station even in the 10-year plan. And so there's going to have to be some adjustments that are made in the budget in order to build the new station. So that's something that I would have to work with and work with the governing body on if we want to insert the building of the new station. But then secondly, adding in, based on a large project like that, the next station, if you were to look at building a new station on the north side, that's even further out, which conditions could change. And so I think that it might be that your recommendation is to reconvene such a decision-making body in 8 years or something like that to decide whether or not it's the right thing to do to build a new station and close 11 and 1. We'll know what the conditions are at that point. Maybe there's additional changes that have occurred. So maybe the recommendation on that part of it ends up being looking at that possibility and analyzing that possibility at a later date, not being able to make a true definitive decision. If the best we can come up with is that another station needs to be done on the west side, then I think you can say that definitively, and then say the other should be reviewed and considered as the next step when it's time, when the governing body feels it's ready for consideration of that decision.
Right. And I remember Councilwoman Ortiz, when that was taken out of the CIP, she said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, because it's hard to get it back in. You remember that, Sylvia? And so I hope that does get done, Sylvia.
Thank you. Brent, I want to know, and I think I've asked this before, but I want to make sure before it was taken out, so we don't have any monies at all that was put up for Station 13?
Correct. That authorization is so old that it's I no longer have authority as city manager given by the governing body to be able to do something because of the way the financing, it's been 7 years since that was approved. And so it's no longer something that is authorized of me. Back when I started it, we had about 1.5 years left. And that's why we made the purchase of the land, and the money used to purchase the land came from that authorization that existed when I got here and started as city manager. But that's since lapsed.
And so the rest of the money just kind of went back and then we lost it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we never borrowed the money.
Oh, okay. That's right. We never borrowed the money.
It was temp
Okay.
noted. It was never borrowed. It was temp noted to build for the design and then was authorized. So we temp noted it to buy the land. And so that's what the authorization. So we never borrowed that money. It just ended up never getting utilized out of the bonding.
Okay. Okay. And let me just say this. That's why, and if I didn't make it clear, I will make it clear. That's why I said I think 13s needs to be built. We've got all the studies that we need. And you know, I don't want to see 1s or 11s closed, but they're going to live their life out. And that's why I wanted to make that recommendation when they cannot no longer function, then we build a new one. And I think that needs to be in this recommendation. And I'll tell you why. It's just like you said, Sandra, once you take something out, it's hard to get it back in. Once you move it down a few years, it's hard to bring it back. And so that's why I said that recommendation needs to come out of here, because we have fought long and hard even to have this meeting, this sit down meeting with the people that we have at the table. Aaron and Jason and the chief to just even discuss it. And that's a big reason why we wanted to come together. So I just think that it's very important that we can be able to go back, or somebody can read down the line, oh, this was their recommendation. They've looked at this. This is why they've looked at this. Because after a couple years, everybody seems to forget everything. After a couple years, everybody can't remember where this went and how it got there. So that's why I said what I said, so we can continue on the process, because eventually they're going to outlive their life like everything else. And things are changing too. Things are changing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chris?
Sandra, could I ask you how many fire committees you've been involved with?
However many there were. I don't know what you mean by committee. I was just involved
Or
with,
commissions or whatnot?
I don't think there were any other ones.
Well, you spent some time dealing with some of this, though. Would you agree to that?
Oh, yeah.
How
I went
much has that actually come to fruition?
there for a while. It was going pretty good. I went around with Jason to all the fire stations and made a list, and city manager looked at them every month, and they were moving right along. Now, since I've left, I don't know where they are.
Now, as far as what Ms. Ortiz spoke of, as far as recommending for Station 1 and Station 11, I think, Mr. Trout, could you give a rough guesstimation? You're saying we're 5 years from really being ready for 1 on 6th Street, which I think we're well due for to help support number 7. So we're looking at least 10, 12 years.
If I were to predict, it would be, yes, 6 years out, we would build that station unless we made the decision to do additional bonding capacity, because it's an $8 million project based on the numbers that I've been provided. So that's right now, the city council is only doing 9 is what's authorized. We're looking at going to 11 basically per year in bonding. And that's how this would have to be paid for. So really, realistically, without some major modifications to the geo bonding capacity or projects that are currently in there, yeah, we're looking at year 6. And that would mean putting some other things back, pushed off in order to be able to do that bonding. And so, and then surely another 4 or 5 years before it fits into the time frame to build another station would be my opinion, in order to be able to factor that. So, yeah, it would be anywhere from 11 to 12 years roughly, would be my guess, before you would be able to have 2 stations built if you decided you were going to build 2 stations.
Exactly.
One thing I wanted to add, I did get some information from Hannah, who handles our facilities. The leaking roof in Station 3 was part of the project, and the contractor that did that work tried to replicate it with using a hose, but they could not replicate the leak. But we have not let them out of the warranty, and we're still working with them to get that leak fixed. So that's still in process, and we're going to figure out what's going on with there. So haven't forgot about it, and we're holding those people that did it accountable. Sorry,
Okay. Aaron?
City manager, I'm curious, where'd you get the 8 million from? And I ask that because there's a department in the suburb of Phoenix, Arizona that just built a brand new state-of-the-art, much nicer than what we would need here. And if I'm not mistaken, off the top of my head, I think it was 7.1 million is what they spent. And if I need to, I could get the details of that.
Yeah.
So just makes me curious where that 8 million's coming up here.
And I'm only going by the number that I was given as far as the design for a 2-bay station over in that area. There were some possibilities that could have done for 6 million, but 8 million was the top end. So that's the number I used. I don't want to say 6 million and it cost 8. A lot of people then will be upset with me. So if I use the high number, then I don't have to worry about, if I can bring it in under that, it's possible. I think the current location has some possibility, but we don't have a design for the actual piece of land we bought. The design was for the other location across the street, which required a lot of retaining walls and some other things. So it was going to be expensive. So it is a possibility it could be 6 million, and that would be something we'd get from the design firm once and adjust that figure. But it still really doesn't change the timeline as far as when we might be able to do it, whether it's 8 million or 6 million. It's still going to be a major portion of that year's geo bonding.
Okay, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, the other question that the other thing that I'm waiting to see as well that makes me give some consideration, especially for I always get the numbers backwards, but you know, right in Nodo is the Pope Quincy Viaduct, you know, project, and you know, there's some of the things that not everyone's privy to that really could come to fruition. As those come to fruition, those are going to be really good things for the city. But something like that is a huge flip of the switch of, you know, whether we need more capacity over there in that area. And then if it doesn't, then you know, the numbers speak differently. So those are some of the things that I was kind of talking about earlier that number one, to go back, is like I said, is I fully support the 6th Street station. I still need the data that I'm analyzing as far as and seeing like the Polk Quincy Viaduct, you know, things such as that. But I also obviously clearly want our stations to you know, be adequately, you know, maintenance adequately provided, and you know, maybe that's something that we look into a maintenance contract possibly. I mean, maybe there's a company that you know, facilities. At the end of the day, you know, I know Brent's going to take care of, I know facilities are going to take care of the catastrophic stuff that happens. I mean, those are the things that's, you know, Duke kind of even, you know, talked about that, you know, the boiler goes out and it's 10 degrees, you know, we're going to get everybody over right away, you know, but the things that still though become a problem, leaky roofs, faucets, all those type of things. Maybe we solve that by looking into, like I said, a company such I'm not even saying that, but for instance, there's property management companies that have maintenance, that do all those different things. And so maybe for some of those smaller maintenance things that we at least entertain, looking into something that's that. And then the other thing that comes with that is, as I've always, anybody knows me, is I always do like to have the opportunity of privatizing. And what comes with privatizing becomes responsibility, meaning we can be held accountable. Somebody else was talking about that earlier, and accountability isn't writing somebody up in the file. It's, if you're a maintenance, we have a maintenance contract with you, and this is involved in the contract, and you don't fulfill it, you don't get written up, you don't get paid, and so that could possibly be something that we could look at. But some cool things that if do come to fruition, then if these things come to fruition, then I don't see how we could close that station. If not, then it's a little bit of a different analysis of, where I wouldn't support closing it, but then the other topic we're talking about, do we leave it open, where we're going with the topic, like Sandy said, we're leaving on the list of looking at whether we have, explorers, and it's more of a medical response. All those type of things. So, what I want to say is the positive thing is this is happening, and we're talking about all these things, and bring it to the forefront and bring it to the council. I think the list that we come through, that we say, hey, whether it's we recommend it or hey, we want to look at it, I don't know that makes that much of a difference. I think it's identifying the issues that we see as problems that need to be addressed and brought to council's attention to say, these things need to be addressed and some of these things need to be fixed, and then see what the governing body thinks of in totality for that.
Great, thank you. Jason? No? Christina?
Thank you. Well, I think that there is a lot of weight that is put on these commissions and committees, and the standing committees that we have, and that we bring recommendations forth on. Those are given a fair amount of weight, which is what led me, to the question, what are we actually doing here? And so, I think that if we're looking at 10 or 11 years down, the road, at the possibility of some enhancements or major changes, being made in, the areas where stations 1 and 11 now occupy, then if that's going to be something that this commission feels like they have the juice for, then I think that it should definitely be spelled out in there that we're not looking at it till that long down the road. And then I think that it also should be a part that this hazard risk assessment has to be done. It has to be shared. That has to be a priority that we write in here tonight as well. People in North Topeka and Oakland want to understand what the risks are for the multitude, for the railway stations that are going, with the river, with the bridges, with the large industrial areas, and they have a right to know that information. So I believe that should also be something that should be put into this. And I would say that if we can put verbiage in there that is going to say we are looking at the possibility of changing something up, but this many years down the road when the budget can accommodate it, I would not be adverse to that. I would still say, though, that this side of North Topeka that we're talking about, they need the manpower and they need the stations. That's what we're looking at right now. Down the road, if we put specific verbiage in the recommendation, then I would not be, I could deal with that. Along with, I think there should be risk assessment verbiage in there.
Okay, so let's move on to, do you have any concerns with the current fire apparatus deployment? Not sure what that means, City Manager.
Well, it deals with the replacement schedule that we've established for our fire apparatuses. And I think, a couple of year is what we have laid out right now. Some years that's a little more. There's actually, I think, 1 year that has 3. So it's pretty aggressive given trying to stay on top of the standard of 10 years. I believe that's the figure that we were using. And so we make adjustments with which unit we actually trade in based on its mileage and usage.
Well, and I think my only concern is that it gets done when it needs to get done. That's
right.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, right now the budget currently has that in there. The replacement schedule that Chief showed is what's being considered for approval by the governing body. So we're not falling behind. The proposed schedule is being implemented.
So does anybody have any adversity to that? I mean, should we not replace it until we absolutely have the money? Should we replace it when they need replacing? Jason?
No, we absolutely need to stay on top of replacing our apparatus. If you guys will look back at that list that Chief Duke sent out, our reserve apparatus, we have some of those apparatus that are 20 years old. And I believe they're supposed to be taken out of service per Chief Duke at 15 years. We've got one that's a 2001, one that's a 2005, a 2004, and a 2000 series. When I left work last week, I don't believe we had any reserve engine companies down in our fleet. One of them, the pump broke on, and we have another one that none of the gauges work. So we definitely need to stay on top of replacing our apparatus to keep up with the demand that we already have.
So that would be our recommendation, City Manager, that
I agree.
be.
Understood.
Okay. What else do we need to cover, City Manager? Now, will you write this up and we get a copy of it so we can say, hey, no, or hey, yes, or on what you're going to recommend?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to recap and make sure that I'm not off base, just to make sure. And I'll go real slow and get head nods from folks here. But so I made notes and starred those items that I think that were agreed to. First one was that Station 13 would be built in District 9. Okay. That we provide repairs to all the existing stations to get them up to their, so that all the situations or issues that need to be dealt with in those stations are dealt with, so that all stations are in working order.
But I think
More
there
than
needs
that.
to be a timeline. There needs
Mhm.
either the governing body needs to make a timeline, or we need to recommend a timeline, because it won't get done.
Agreed.
All by June or all by Jason.
Sandra, that's what Short Design Group is doing right now. They're going around and evaluating our stations to see which station is going to need to be fixed first. So they are actually working on that. We just need to see that come to fruition.
Right, correct. Okay.
Then,
Sorry, just a second, Aaron.
I appreciate what Jason said, but I'll go back to what Sandra said. What is the timeline for Short Design Group to have that list back to the city. I think we need to put a timeline on that. Otherwise,
Um,
we're not going to get it in a
Agreed.
timely manner.
Well, I'm going to have to ask for a little bit of grace, at least for tonight, related to that. I've been texting a little bit with Hannah Ulrich, and her team at facilities is the one that is working through that. And there's members of the firefighters that are on that process. And so that's being developed. And I don't know how far along they are and what that timeline is going to be. And also, I mean, if you say there's $5 million worth of repairs that need to be done, I can't get that done in 2 years. Some of them may need to be done further out. It depends on what you're classifying them as a repair, or is it a renovation?
Why can't you get it done before 5 years?
No. I said in 2 years, 5 million in 2 years.
Why can't you get it done in 2 years?
Well, are we talking repair or renovation? Because they're doing
Oh,
both.
repairs.
Oh, the repairs, those will be done quickly. So
What's quickly? I mean, my quickly is in a month. What's your quickly?
well, dealing with 12 buildings and scheduling all of that, I can't give you an answer. I said, I can't give you an answer. We've done as quickly as
We should get some kind of estimate before we sign off on this as a commission. I would just say, I agree with Sandy. I understand the difficulty with setting it in stone, but we should at least have a better understanding of where we are with this.
Sure, and we're developing that, Councilwoman, but that's true of every building and everything that I have with the city. It doesn't all happen overnight. So, but I will develop that and I will include that.
Chris,
As Mr. Lesser had said, as far as privatizing, like the repairs, I think, I think, let me put it this way. I think that is no brainer because you are commissioning small businesses in the area to accomplish a job, and they will get it done quicker because they need the money versus using the city, what do you call it, the maintenance team who comes in and that's good enough until the next train. I truly think that what Mr. Lesser said should have some merit put to it and really look into that.
And Hannah informed me that the assessments were completed today. So that process is moving along, and we will look at what types of things are on that list and come up with a time frame. There's money that the governing body puts into the FIRM program. There's fire representative on that. And I was talking to her, we may need to look at, there's a little subcommittee or something like that that's, focuses on this a little more in order to be able to move that part of it forward. But we have all the buildings and 1.6 million to fix all buildings throughout the year. But I'll get you an estimate on what we're looking at with types of repairs and a time frame that'll be included in that.
thank you. Maybe that's just something the governing body is going to have to keep on top of and put more money into, since you know how.
Well, and we actually, that's one of the items that got plussed up when the governing body looked at going to 11 million roughly per year for improvements. There was additional money put into the FIRM program, which is money to assist with improvements on our buildings. So that is in the prediction or the forecast for this current budget that we're looking at for CIP. So.
Good deal. Okay, you can continue. Oh, wait, Mike.
Yeah, and I will kind of piggyback on that, and Sylvia or Brent can jump in on this a little bit too. There was conversation. One of the reasons, Christina, you weren't on yet, but that was one of the conversations. I know Sylvia and I actually spoke, and Tony spoke, and even Brent agreed was that was one of the reasons when we cut down the project for City Hall, the I call it Taj Mahal City Hall that was going up. Yeah, part of the reason that we cut that back down was at least a large group of us wanted that money to be spent on deferred maintenance to fire stations, to those type of things, and so and I think that was one of the things that Sylvia and I actually even specifically talked about as well at that point in time. And if you guys remember, if I'm correct, I'm remembering correct?
You are, Councilman. That is exactly right. We have many things that we need to repair on our own, and this building wasn't one of the ones that needed a full renovation of at the moment.
So I say that just then in totality that at least the members that were still on that, and obviously Christina's going to fall in line with that too, have the definitely have the appetite for taking care of this deferred maintenance. So anyway, that's all I had. Well, I'm sorry, you were there too, Sandy, so you remember it too. So I'm sorry.
Oh, how soon you forget me. Okay.
I don't forget you.
So fixing the existing stations, and then we'll develop a timeline for that. Then the other one, then I think what I heard was before a decision is made relative to another station, that we would analyze current conditions and determine what's appropriate for consideration of a change on the north side, and just put it in that way, whether we would build a new station or not, that it would need to be reevaluated for future by someone else, another fire commission, the governing body, somebody else. Bottom line, reevaluated at the time that once station 12 is done, then reevaluate, or excuse me, once station 13 would be completed, we would reevaluate whether or not changes needed to be made with additional fire stations at that point. That's the way I would do it.
Okay.
And then the risk assessment for fire, I did see a note in the chat related to this. Aaron Mahon is on. He can't communicate other than by chat, but he said they completed the commodity flow study to determine what hazards are in all of Shawnee County, to include the city of Topeka. And we are working to conduct exercise to see how we can improve where we need equipment, personnel, and apparatus. This is being led by the local emergency planning committee. So Shawnee County Emergency Planning is in the process of doing what you were talking about, Councilwoman Badigiacola. So that is being worked on at this point.
Christina.
Thanks, Sandy. So is that the same one that the chief was talking about that may not have been done until like June? Is that what you were talking about, Chief?
No, ma'am. This was a grant that we received, and it helps us deal with community risk reduction in a lot of aspects, looking at the social economic impact in that part of the community and how we could better respond in that community. It actually is online. When I say online, we just got our dice board last week, and it's been filled with all of the federal data from the census and everything. And so it shows us every community in the part of the city. We can go down to a block, and we will look at our call loads and types of calls and everything, and then we can better know what we're going to be responding to in the future. So we're just trying to keep up with the times. This is just sort of like a map that shows us where that part of the community is going, whether it's getting older or, you know, we have more fires there, then we have be able to go do inspections and have the firefighters and the fire inspectors go out and, you know, get smoke detectors in there, teach fire safety to the community at a community building, because we can show them the data that says, hey, we have a lot of fires in this area and nobody's got smoke detectors, and then explain to them the whys they needed and how I could help them.
Yeah. so-
Okay, so we're looking then, Brent, at two different ones, but the more comprehensive one, the more impactful one probably is going to be the one from the county.
Well, the one from the county will provide you a better handle as it relates to hazardous materials and dangers that occur with materials that are traveling through our community or exist in our community that might be dangerous as far as the chemical content, the explosiveness, danger for inhalation if there was a fire in that area. And so that's what they're studying. So in other words, looking at a larger hazardous material type concept and the materials that are traveling through our community. And then what Chief is talking about is a more down neighborhood by neighborhood analysis. And it's a different type of study. So there are two different types of studies.
So my bottom line is, how can we get this as part of what we're recommending out so that folks that are most impacted by the possibilities of any of this
Sure.
be informed and educated?
Yeah, what I would say is we can incorporate that these two studies be used in the analysis that we will do to look at what should happen with the North Side Fire Station should be considered during that process.
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and the last one that I had was that we continue to follow and fund the replacement of apparatus per the schedule provided by Chief Duke. Or fast.
Okay. Is that all we need? Is that all the recommendations you're looking for?
I think it is. I think it's pretty comprehensive. I think it puts information forward as best we can at this point. I think it's a realization that to make the decision on the north side can't be made in a definitive way, but that it needs to be. And so at some point, somebody else is going to have to look at that. Can't be made in a definitive way, but that this is a way.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any? Yes, Sylvia.
Thank you, Sandra. Brent, is there anything, I know we're getting COVID money. Is there anything
Dude, please.
that
Who's on
we can
our,
buy with our COVID money to cut some of the costs for the guys?
Duke, can you mute? Thank you. Or somebody else. Yeah, that's something that we can look at. There are a number of things that we've already purchased with some of the COVID money, additional bunker gear, some other things. And with, especially with this next round of monies that we're going to receive, we'll be taking a look at what other types can be done. We still have some money left from our initial CARES Act allocation. And so definitely would be analyzing where we can spend that money. And if we can find a targeted type way to utilize it, definitely. And it's cash money, not borrowed money. And so we'll be looking at all options. And I think, you know, maybe that's something that can end up being part of our discussion with when the assessments are done on the fire stations. And maybe that's the priority that we can look at towards the utilization of that money.
Well, I know that the life packs, couldn't we use that with our COVID money for the state, for the firefighters?
The life packs, I'm not sure which one that is.
For the ALS?
Oh,
Eric, can you
yeah,
help?
right. Yeah, I think, yes. And that's something that is actually was in consideration for the money before, and we weren't sure where the money was going to be spent. So it is an item that we've considered for that funding, yes.
Okay. And another thing is, I got an email from a lady, and I even talked to some of the guys, and we should have batteries, you know, right now with COVID and we're not able to go in. It's as little as batteries. Our station should be equipped with batteries that and even on the trucks, that they can give those out to people that are in need, to help them during this COVID time. Because I just cringe every time I get a message and it says no working smoke detectors.
Yeah.
At this, I just cringe, and it's more hit than miss. So those are just really, really easy things. And with the COVID money, if we could cut down on some of their costs to give them some other stuff, I think that would be great.
Well, and
Aaron and Jason, I don't know if you guys can think of anything else. If you want to chime in, that'd be great.
I also think, I can't remember if you said you were going to recommend that there might be a smaller committee that holds whoever responsible for the maintenance on the stations. Did you say you were going to recommend that, or was that just a thought?
no, that's something that I've already was talking with Hannah about, that there's already a larger firm committee that oversees, that gets together, and there's representatives from other departments that get together and talk. The idea being that maybe there needs to be a subcommittee of that's really studying in more detail what needs to be done at each station, so that they can work together to better understand what they want to recommend to the full firm committee that makes decisions on where money will be spent from that allocation.
Well, I think the governing body needs to decide too, who is going to hold who accountable for the maintenance on the.
Well, the true reality is, and Hannah has only had this for not even quite a year yet as a responsibility. And so she's making changes within how that's managed. And so that, that is something that she's been working and getting her hands around. She's the one that made the decision to brought the recommendation to get Short Design in here and do those assessments to better understand what we had for a need. And so that was really the first step that she identified as needed to be done in order to make this happen in a better, more coherent way. And so she's been really working up to this point where now we can start working on a better implementation of that. And so I think that ultimately it has to come to me, but then we need to look at reporting that information to an organization. And we have a infrastructure committee that was created by the governing body that's looking at capital expenditures. And so I think it's something that can be reported to them, where they're holding me accountable as overseeing facilities and maintenance. So that's the proper chain as to where it should go.
Right, but I know how busy you are. I know how busy the council is. If it can get stopped before you, it just takes that off your plate. So I just hope someone holds somebody accountable, because I really will be disappointed if a year from now I'm still hearing from the firefighters, you know what, we still aren't getting stuff done, or this is still not fixed from 3 years ago. That's just what I want to make sure stops.
I agree, Sandy. Good point.
Sylvia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't know if in our recommendations, if we can put in there to use whatever COVID funding available immediately to get them whatever they need, like I think they have a list of stuff, like the life packs. The life packs for the ALS. I would use that as a recommendation so that we have that in there. I just think we just need to have it set in stone so that everybody's in agreement, and it's not a question when we take this back to the council, the governing body. The discussion, there's been a lot of discussions, but these are the recommendations that are going back, and I want to make sure that that's set in stone for the guys. Thank you.
Councilwoman Ortiz, what I would do is simply put in there, use any available funding to complete projects as quickly as possible.
And Brent, I agree with that, but I also agree that the COVID money, it's coming awful fast, right?
Well, the new allocation, we don't really know the specifics as to what it's allowed to be used for. So I can't say yes definitively that we can spend it on this. Initial comments that I have is we probably have some out of this that can be used that way. But I hesitate to say because I don't have definitive guidelines. They haven't been created by the federal government yet.
But I think we could put wording in there. If to use any and all COVID money available, that we, any and all covers everything. Any and all COVID monies that's available to reimburse funding for the
I got it.
You got it? Okay. But I think that would be a good recommendation because this is a one-time money thing. And I think it's really, really important. Everybody's trying to get a piece of the pie. And I agree they need a piece of pie as well. That'll free us up somewhere else in the budget, whether it's next year or the year after that. I really, really believe in that. Because I know I get what you're saying. There's certain things that we can't use it for, but God, if we can, I think that's really important. And I would just like to see that recommendation. So I would throw that out there to the committee. Thank you, Sandra.
Sandy and city manager, I definitely would agree with that. And if it makes sense to be able to utilize that money however possible, as long as the guidelines apply. I hear what you're saying, though, city manager, but it still should be put in there.
Understood.
Perfect. Anything else?
I just wanted to say thanks, Sandy, for serving as co-chair.
Thank you for serving on the committee. Thanks, everybody. Everybody showed up and spoke up, and it was good. Now it's on to you, city manager and the governing body. And we'll be watching you.
I know you will be. And I'm worried. Thank you, dude.
There you go. Yeah, Sylvia.
I just want to thank everybody for taking their time out, for looking through all the stuff, for listening and being a part of this committee. It is very important across the city of Topeka, as well as in your own neighborhood. And I just want to say thank you. I see some new faces. Richie Rich is on there, and it was great to sit down with not only staff, but the people that do the job each and every day, that knows what's out there, that knows what's going on, and to be able to listen to them. I think we had a good conversation. This committee could probably go on for years, but I'm sure Lesser Ones has other things to do. But anyway, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Luann, who's has worked tirelessly, and Sandra, thanks. I hope you would come to the council to present or answer any questions that the governing body might have. They'd be glad to see you. Thank you.
Will do.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I had to get off the computer because my Wi-Fi in my office is not very good, and you all kept locking up on me, and I hardly heard most of the last 10 minutes. But with that being said, I do want to thank everybody serving on that committee, and I hopefully what happens next is steps forward, and we don't just tread in water. We just got to move forward. That's all I want.
Yes. Yep. All right. Thanks, everybody. I think we're done.
Thank you.
Bye.